ready as we're ever going to be.
All righty. Well, that's your entrance. We're back here with the Appalachian Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Riddle. With me is my cultural appropriating co-host, Simon Winch.
Good Abend.
There we go. That's
just getting it. Just kick it off.
You know, the one thing I really enjoy about doing this show is kind of ties into my day job. And the reason I'm still going to my day job is because I get to travel around, you know, the greater part of the Virginia's Appalachian region. I'm from anywhere from the Shenandoah Valley, Roanoke Valley, New River Valley, even down in the coal country, Abingdon. And this past week, got to go to Abingdon and made a delivery to this place called The Girl and the Raven, and pretty good coffee shop. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, you know, we hadn't had anybody. We've been trying.
That sounded like a strip joint.
It could.
Oh, I mean, that was what went straight to my mind.
If you,
I mean, really?
See where your mind is going. Anyway, we just got to talking to them, and the guy had some really cool stories about him and some connections to people he had in Franklin County. And I thought about, you know, that's another cool Appalachian spot, and you know, he's got these really incredible. Anyway, so invited them to come up on the show, and they apparently have. His son-in-law is Irish, and that's one of the big reasons why I wanted this to go down. Simon, I'm just curious about your thoughts about sitting across. And mind you, you have no idea, and I have no idea what this person is like, anything to that nature, what his, you know, preferences are. I'm just curious, just between an Englishman and Irishman, just what are the possibilities?
Oh man, it'll be great. I mean,
so y'all get along pretty good.
Oh, of course.
So we're talking drinking contests. Who can?
Yeah, and let me know. I've been to Ireland. I've played rugby in Ireland, in Southern Ireland, when the Troubles were going on, and I had to be very cautious about, you know, my accent and not being as boisterous as I normally am. And you know, I was in bandit country, so as an Englishman down there, you had to be a little bit cautious. But it's such a beautiful country, and the concept that they had down there, and it's such an Irishism, it was brilliant. Their pubs would open, and they would have happy hour, but happy hour would last for 2. It was awesome. And it's a beautiful country. I personally think Ireland should be a united Ireland, not the nonsense that we have between the north and the south, and it gets very complicated. There's a lot of history there. But quite frankly, Ireland should be Ireland.
Well, you know, if I'm not mistaken, and this is a whole another conversation about, you know, the longevity of this planet we live on, quote unquote. But if I'm not mistaken, though, don't like the island chains that follow underneath the Atlantic pick back up the same that are attached to the Appalachians. I mean, essentially, I've always heard that the Appalachian region in this country and like Northern England, Ireland, like. Tons of like,
yeah, that was a separation. I mean, you know, that's they're fundamentally the same rock geological formation.
Yeah, so the mountains are a lot alike, and a lot of our, dare I say, redneck attributes came from because it's pretty fascinating how Northern England and Southern Ireland and all those areas, those were the rednecks, the hillbillies back in. Those are the ones who would, you know, fight for no reason, and
I mean, the Romans built a wall across the whole of north of England to keep the bloody Scots out, right?
Yeah, don't talk about my mama kind of throwing down. You know, that's what they did, and they brought that over here, and then yeah. So yeah, I think it'd be pretty interesting to.
Yeah, that'll be a good show. I mean, the Irish and the country of Ireland, the Emerald Isle. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
And just what are the odds, though? I mean, I like that aspect of it. I like being able to sit down, 2 people coming across the pond and getting their different perspectives on top of the other 2 guys that'll be coming up. You know, the guy who's the head coffee mixer maker guy, whatever, brewmaster. What do they call him? Anybody know what they call a head coffee guy? He would be the brewmaster.
Oh, the head coffee. He's a roaster.
Roaster, okay. Yeah, I guess he's the head roaster. Yeah, master roaster. So the master roaster might be coming up here, and along with the guy, I think, who owns a place, or his family owns a place. He seemed to be the real interesting one. He comes from coal country down that way, and like I said, just immediately started talking about bluegrass and playing with some of Franklin County's finest. And I said, I think we can make this happen.
And of course, all Irishmen are poets, right?
Well, everybody who drinks is a poet.
And did you know it? And there is Billy slurping on a Crown and Coke. Just in case anyone was imagining what was that clanking around a glass.
Look, I just got home from a weekend at the in-laws. I love my in-laws. It's not like it's a bad thing. It's beautiful down there. I enjoy the scenery. My in-laws are great. Always have beer waiting for us. But my wife, they went down there this weekend, and I got the old, well, you can just stay home if you want and have fun message. And I knew immediately that was a trap. Because although I could make that decision because she handed it out there, the investment wouldn't be worth the return. You know what I mean?
Oh no, that was a trap that was set with cunningness.
It very much was. She's like, because she wasn't feeling very good, and she's like, "Well, you just stay up there and giving me the option whether to stay up here and have fun, and maybe go up to the wood shop or come down there and at least help her out while she's sick." And although she gave me the option, there really was no option.
No, there was no option, but it was a very wise choice, Billy.
Yeah, so I ended up driving down there.
That was strategery at work.
It was. I have depleted my brownie points fund. Actually, I'm in the rears. I'm in the red, and I'm having to borrow against things just to.
Oh no.
Yeah, so something like that probably at least maybe got me back to. I'm gonna withdraw. I'm gonna overdraft next time, probably on Friday.
Perhaps you're neutrally buoyant right now.
Friday, I'm gonna overdraft again.
Oh yeah, we know that's going down.
So. Because I'll get a message at some point in time like, y'all still recording? And I'll look down, it'll be 4.5 hours and say, yes, we are. Because it's going to be the 100th, it would have been. You're going to listen to this show after that one, so just keep that in mind, people. So we haven't really got all the good stuff yet. But either way, just
in fact, by the time they hear this, they'll have heard that.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So go back, and if you hadn't listened to it yet, our 100th episode special is going to be the State of Appalachia Part 2.
Oh dear.
And we're going to bring back the same characters we had last go round, with in addition to Jonah sitting right here with us today and Chris Montgomery.
Oh dear Lord.
So you want to talk about a room with a lot of gears to grind, and awful lot of problems, and you're all going to hear about them.
It's going to be very. I think the expletives are going to be pouring out.
They did the last time.
Yeah, I was started that. I'm sorry about that.
Been roughly a year, but we have had him on Spoke of the Appalachia Standing on one of our Patreon episodes. So if you haven't yet, go to patreon.com/getontap. Just $3 a month. You get all these episodes early, so you can be listening to this one early. You get subscriber only content that we try and put out there from time to time, amongst other things. We're going to have some live shows coming up here in the near future. With some pretty big guests. So if you're a subscriber, then you'll probably get first dibs on maybe tickets to those or free passes to it. Yeah, we'll try and hook anybody up we can that gives us their time, effort. And we have some new patrons. We're moving in. We're moving up. We're getting more and more each week. So certainly appreciate all of our new ones. And hopefully here at the end of the month, or at the 100th episode, we'll go ahead and name all y'all off. So we've already named y'all, I guess, if you listen to this one now. This is getting confusing now.
I know it's like a time warp. Hang on, where are we? Oh hell!
Like we could probably sit here and talk about the things we have hypothetically talked about on that show already, but we're not going to do that to our guest today. We're gonna be able to record this show, which is going to be episode 101, as if 100 has never happened yet, because technically it hasn't. Although we know when it does, it's going to be.
If you're confused, you should be.
Yeah, I was like, I need a diagram, and I'm right here.
Yeah, I need a drawing. My name is Simon, and I like to do drawing.
We got the English Bob Ross sitting here with us today, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, patreon.com/getontap. Or you can go to Cash App, Get On Tap, if you want to just throw like a one-time donation down. Hey, look, everything you do, we reinvest it back into the community one way, shape, or form. Either buy our beer from the store down the street, or buy our meat from local people, or buy our, we're taking the money you give us and we're reinvesting.
We're investing it wisely
into the community, absolutely. And we're trying to take this to another level. We'd like to get some cameras in here to record Simon on video telling some of his stories, because you can't quite appreciate them unless you see the gestures and the body language. So, maybe not recording the entire show at length, but maybe recording enough to get a few clips here and there, because apparently that's the attention span people have.
The goldfish.
It's very short. And so, so if we just do a clip, maybe maybe if 1,000 people watch a clip and 100 new ones say, well, man, that's interesting enough, I might listen to the whole show. You know,
you don't know.
We're just trying to reach new audiences and stuff. We're trying not to be stagnant, trying to challenge ourselves and find new ways. And I think today is a big challenge because the guest we have on here today and the topic at hand, you know what, Sam, I'm going to let you talk about it because you're very articulate. And maybe you can explain how today's episode's going to go.
Well, I'm not really sure. It's a subject. There's two things in life, right, that are absolutely guaranteed. Paying tax is one of them. That's one of my pet peeves. It's all thievery. And the other one is death. You are guaranteed to die at some point. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure if you're in control of that either. I think there's a far bigger power pulling the strings. So
I think we do have some people that are running some big organizations, particularly government entities, that somehow I think want to live forever. I think they're doing things to try and, but that's another
conspiracy.
That's a topic for our previous show. We might have to get into.
I think you should bung it around the room. Let's see who we've got here, because we've got a frequent guest who is coming back on again. And then we have our surprise guest. So let me pass it around the room.
Yeah, I'm back. I guess I'm glutton for punishment. I even took vacation to be here. So
this is Jonah.
Yeah.
Yes, you'll remember him from the Come Home to Christmas episode. He sat in with us quite a bit on that. And then he was on the our episode with Thad and Gail on the What You Eat show, so which was a phenomenal, that was a really fun show. So welcome back, Jonah.
Drum roll.
Well, my name is Dylan Taylor, and I'm an employee at Flora Funeral Service here in Rocky Mount, local funeral home. Kind of new to this thing, so kind of want to take their lead on it.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Undertaker here today, and we ain't talking about wrestling.
It's not the wrestling Undertaker.
It's most certainly not. But I think this is a conversation. I think there's a ton of people out here who. So we want to talk about the ins and outs of the business, but kind of talk about some of the things. Because I think there's a lot of people out there, younger people, who, if something happened to them tomorrow, they wouldn't have a clue their options. You know what I mean?
And, or what goes on.
Yeah. Or what to expect when you walk up in there, because you might walk in there and take a wrong door, and you might walk into a room full of caskets and bodies like I did when I was a kid. Kind of creepy. But you want to be prepared for all these kind of things. And for me, I think it's going to be interesting to talk about some of these things and walk that fine line of our.
Well, there has to be humor. There has to be humor.
Because I just want people to know, as a disclaimer, that we are entertainers.
Yeah, it's a show, right?
We might be crappy ones, but we are, to say the least. There's enough people that tune in that I think find our tit for tat enjoyable enough to listen to whoever we have on here. So anything we're not going to attempt. We don't have jokes prepared in our heads, but after a couple,
trust me, I've got a couple.
Oh, of course, Simon,
and a song, but I'm not going to sing the song. I won't do it.
We heard.
But I want to ask Dylan. So, right, what happens? Let's just say there's been a death in the family. Obviously, it's a very sad, emotional time. Now, at what point are you drawn in to the process? This is the family comes to you and say, unfortunately, we've had a bereavement in the family, even if they haven't pre-prepared. So how do you sort of open that discussion? What options are you giving people? And then I want to go through the process of what you actually do in preparing a corpse. And I don't want the gory details. But I'm kind of intrigued as to the whole process. So give us a synopsis of what goes on. And we may crack a few jokes in the middle.
Simon, that was professionalism at its tip top. I mean, I'm rather impressed with you. Where did that line of questioning come from?
I've got no idea. But it just, I mean, I'm kind of intrigued about the process, because I do have some pointed questions that probably will put me in this conspiracy theorist. I'll leave that. You'll know when it's coming. But yeah, tell us a little bit about how this process starts and really what methods you employ, because as an Englishman, we don't do open caskets and viewings. When we came here and the open casket thing, I was just like, what the bloody hell's going on?
Barbarians, huh?
Yeah, I thought complete savages. What the hell?
Well, if you'd have come 100 years ago, I mean, you used to have funerals like in people's living rooms and stuff, and they'd have big parties right there.
Well, yeah,
they'd be drinking
Yeah.
and carrying on. They'd be picking the body up out of the casket and dancing with it.
And there's been the door below the window that would take bodies out. I've seen some of those around. But the open casket concept to me was just like, oh, Lord, I'm not quite sure I want that.
And see, I'm actually for the open casket.
No.
Because I think it's good to kind of.
But that's the last memory that you
have.
have.
I don't think it's the last memory. I think it's also good because people that had open casket to me were like, they wanted to tell people like, hey, you're mortal, you're going to die. That's the reason they wanted it.
Okay.
So a few people I know of, they had closed casket because the one lady, she had a very bad cancerous growth on her face. You know, she didn't want that. She didn't want people viewing her like that.
Yeah.
Which I understand. There's certain reasons why you don't, but yeah, I'm for it because like that's how I expose my son, which he's only almost 4 now, to like death is like you're gonna die. Like, and I've been to because where I was homeschooled and I grew up around a bunch of older people. Like I've been to numerous funerals, and I think there's sort of a closure though when you can see
I can
somebody.
see the closure angle.
Yeah, because I had a really good friend that was cremated, and there was no viewing. There was a really nice memorial service, but I still have to remember that she passed away, and that's kind of hard when I can't remember that. Sometimes I think I can call her, and she's like, "Oh, wait a minute, she's gone."
You couldn't get that closure that you get when you view the body for that final time. Yes.
I mean, I kind of see the angle. It's not my cup of tea, personally. So that's, I mean, if my preference was throw me in a sack with a couple of cannonballs in the bottom and throw me over the edge, I'd love to be buried at sea, but that's just me. But yeah, Dylan, open the our vision of what goes on behind the closed door.
Well, so all this pressure kind of makes me feel like I'm on 60 Minutes or something like that,
Just keep drinking what's in that bottle, you'll loosen up, I promise. I'm just kidding. He ain't drinking nothing but water.
So really, it all starts off by, when you receive what we call a first call. It's just called a first call. And, whether it's, a call from a hospice entity, a nursing home, a sheriff's office, whoever is calling, that is because the family has, requested us as the funeral home of choice, or they do have those prearrangements or something in that nature that they want their loved one's body to be brought into our care. Well, it's almost like as soon as they say that, hey, we would like Flora to come get the body, that's kind of when we feel as, okay, the family is expecting you. So, it's serious time now for them because, they're entrusting us to be prompt, make it there, within a reasonable time and not say, hey, we'll get there when we can.
You actually have to pick the body up from the mortuary or the residence of the deceased person.
Yes,
or the hospice or wherever.
So nowadays, a lot of funeral homes in bigger areas, they have different rules, but as far as Flora Funeral Service here in Rocky Mount, we still run, within our county area, we run 100% of our home calls that we receive where the loved one is still at the home. Any hospital calls, any sheriff's office calls, we always respond to those. And that's what's good about having such a staff that we do, that, we're spread out all over this county. So it's a good chance that when we go for that first call that we're going to be able to make a connection with somebody in the county because, that's kind of what it's all about, is seeing a familiar face when we get there. It kind of makes it more comfortable for the people, because when they call you, and it could be, somebody they've never met, but for somebody to choose the funeral home that way, you need to be able to show that you have dignity and compassion and respect for their loved ones, so they trust you to take their loved one's body to your funeral home or service, whichever you prefer to say, and that you're going to take the utmost care of their loved one, because that's a pretty big deal in this area.
Yeah.
We have a lot of close knit families, and
well, the chances are offering a local service like this. I've been to a few of the viewings at Flora's, so the chances are they're very familiar, with that process. What happens? Okay, here comes. I don't know what the laws are here. If there's an unexpected death, sometimes I don't know if it's a sometimes or it has to be, they have to do a post-mortem, and that's done at probably one of the big hospitals.
As far as autopsy stuff like that's done at medical examiners' offices. I think there's 4 located in Virginia. There's one in Roanoke, I believe Norfolk, Richmond, and Manassas, I think, is the 4 locations that we have in Virginia.
That point, if there's an autopsy, do they return the body to the home, or does the funeral director and staff go to the wherever this autopsy was taking place?
Yeah, so that's when, we would still come into play. We would still go and, retrieve that body from the medical examiner's office. Of course, we would try, the family would get in contact with us, but we still go pick up their loved one from there. Yes.
Okay. So now you've got this deceased person, you've got the body in the funeral home. And I don't want you to go into any, gory details by any stretch, but there's obviously a process where is there an embalming or removal of fluids, or just give us a synopsis of what goes on in the preparation, because I don't really know, but I do have a question once you've answered.
Okay.
Which goes into the conspiracy theory.
Oh, Lord.
So really it all just depends on what the individual or the family wants as their final disposition. I know that, it's like Billy said earlier, as far as the podcast, keeping up with times and everything. And we've tried to do that as well. We offer, of course, burials, cremations, natural burials, and whatever we can to make that family's wishes, come true to what they want. There is such thing as, having a, body for viewing and then cremated after the viewing, so you can have that final view that we spoke of earlier. Mm-hmm. There's many different avenues, and that's the interesting thing about funeral service that, even though I didn't ever expect to go into this, but the interesting thing is not one day is ever the same. There will always be something different in every day. So, but when we go to, pick up somebody's loved one, and you would kind of ask them, what would they want, and of course, if it's going to be a burial at one of our local cemeteries or somewhere here in the county, and we serve families that are, some are buried in Washington State, some are buried in Cincinnati, just to name a few random places. We come back and do the embalming and preparation. We don't believe in, postponing that work. We are pretty adamant about taking care of, somebody.
Speed is of the essence there for fairly obvious reasons.
Yes, and but as far as cremation, we set up a time, and we always offer families that final viewing. I think a lot of people don't know that. If somebody chooses cremation, you can still have a final view at the funeral home, and where the family and, a small, immediate family gathering can come and view them before that cremation takes place. A lot of people think that that'll be the last time they ever see them again, when we can offer them one final time to view. And as far as natural burials and we offer that as well, and I think that's a growing trend, especially in the county. Mountain View Memorial Park out on Grassy Hill Road actually has Forest Rest Cemetery, and that's the natural burial area that they have set up there. So we are moving with the times, even though everybody might pass by and it's just a little Rocky Mount sign. We're keeping up right along. I truly believe so.
I think that the natural burial does appeal to a lot of people for all the right reasons, because with the increasing costs of caskets and so forth, you know, I mean, what is the average cost now of a casket style burial? I mean, I'm sure it's upwards of $8,000 or $9,000.
You know, I would say that you're right around that ballpark. You know, and you know it. I think used to back in the day, you used to could say, you know, well, it's around this number, but now there is so many different options and avenues to make selections. I mean, you know, we have everything from, you know, caskets that are on the lower end to the very upper end. It just depends on what they want. Right. You know. We try to, you know, we try to make everything as best as possible for that family and whatever they want to do. So if they want to, you know, go all out or be minimal, we serve everybody the same.
You've got the options, because that's the ultimately one of the things that just chaps my arse is the IRS and death duties or whatever they call it here. That one is just the ultimate kick. And then when you've got the cost of a funeral being, you know, upwards of $8,000, you kind of think, hang about this. This is a bloody racket. Now, I'm not saying that the funeral business is a racket. It's an absolute necessary. And when it's done respectfully and to the wishes of the family, I think, you know, you earn your place in the community. And I kind of struggle with the concept of dropping $20,000 with, you know, gold handles on the casket or whatever it may be. I mean,
well, think about the pyramids. I mean, there were kings that were buried in those. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, so I mean, if you really put things into perspective, like
that was planning.
Hey, look, if you've got if you've got the money to do it, and you want golden rim caskets or whatever,
have at it.
As far as I'm concerned, throw me in a pine box.
Okay.
Just for the people to come by and look at me. And then after that, I won't thrown into the ground.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about the family burial plots around here. I know Virginia has some very, very liberal laws about just, this is where I want to be buried. Just put me in the ground.
Well, actually enough, you know, we've had several families that, you know, have, you know, buried, you know, close to their homes. You know, that's something that, you know, as far as the legal laws and what you'd have to look into, I think that it's actually a little more, as long as you're not against somebody else's property or close to somebody else's home, you know, where it's considered next to their dwelling, then I think you're pretty much okay. You would just have to put that on like your land deed. That way, that's always there saying that there are people buried.
Yeah. But you know what? When you put that on there, and I think, I'm not sure how Virginia's concerned, but I would urge everybody around here that's listening to this that has any kind of, you know, any kind of property with multiple acres on it. Because I'd heard a story about this. And I think it was Trump, which was genius. I think that he not bury his former ex-wife or whatever. She was buried down at Mar-a-Lago, if I'm not mistaken. Well, now all of a sudden that makes Mar-a-Lago a place of burial, which puts in a completely different tax bracket and tax things, and with the ability of what the government has to do to come in. So that's where I want to be buried on my family farm, because if I can arrange it out to be, then for tax purposes and for a government intrusion, now your property becomes essentially a cemetery. So
you've got to then as a family plot, I believe you have to have an easement of access for family members should the plot be sold.
I think you're legally required. I've looked into it because I was going to try to get my church to do a church graveyard. But I looked into it because of I was looking at properties that had, you know, graves on it. And I know one of my coworkers, he cleaned up a family graveyard that was in like the center of his property. And as soon as he cleaned it up, like apparently there was a death in that family and they just put another one in there. And he's like, I'm not going to say anything. And around here, I think there's a good culture about respecting the family graveyard plot
if it's kept up. I mean, and I think that's a responsibility. Any graveyard. Well, then you get these churches now that just fall by the wayside. And it's to me, it's I don't know. It seems there's an element of just tragic loss when these graveyards become overgrown and just no longer kept.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're thinking about that, you're thinking about that in such a small window.
Oh yeah,
because in our window right now, we think, well, yeah, go out there and you should respect any grave that you can. But there are graves from 400, 500, 600 years ago now that have completely been gone and lost, and we have no idea. And a lot of times we just go in and we just dig them right on up to build new housing and things like that. And you got to think at some point in time, even the cemeteries around here become the same thing. Like they'll become dilapidated, people forget about them, and next thing you know, the markers will end up deteriorating, falling down, and that's just how the world will go.
We had a cottage. This was a family cottage back in England in North Devon. And it was an old cottage. It was opposite a graveyard. And there was a leak from the road coming in underneath the floor. And it was a beautiful slate floor. But the slate looked fairly similar to some of the things that were on the other side of the road. So anyway, we had to pull up these flagstones. And on the other side were the names of the deceased that they'd taken the flagstones off to put the floor in this dining room in our cottage.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh man, I don't feel too good about this. But, it intrigues me. But now my conspiracy theory question to you, and there's been a lot for those that stray from mainstream media, I commend you. But there's been a lot of talk about the COVID sudden deaths and so forth, and with clotting and all of this. Have you seen any? I think over the last 18 months, let's say, have you seen an uptick in business? And have you ever come across any of these very strange clots that are coming out of these deceased bodies? I'm just intrigued, and you don't have to give me the gory details. Yeah. I think if you know, you know, and I'm just saying, either confirm it or deny it.
Well, so that's actually a really good question. I've actually had several of my friends that are my age and everything ask me those things because you see that all the time on the news. COVID didn't really hit us until about, I would say, the end of 2021. I remember in November of 2021 to, January, it was so hard, and we were coming in every day, and we were just saying, we hurt for the families because it's so many people, we're here when they need us, but we don't like to, we're not there just waiting for something to happen,
Oh, no, that would be morbid.
Well, on top of that too, at this point in time, you have taken on a new role that was something that you all have never had to dealt with before, and that was the fact that for the first time, people weren't allowed to sit there and be with their loved ones as they pass along. These hospitals and medical professional buildings would not allow families to go in there and be with their families in their dying moments. Not even give them the option to be like, you know what, I don't. So you all were really the first people.
Front line
when it came to this. You were the first people the family dealt with without having that. So now you have a whole new set of families that didn't have that normal grieving process, because a lot of the times that grieving process starts when, okay, your loved one is passing on, it's inevitable, it's coming very soon, but you're there with them, you're there by their house if they have hospice care, you're there by their bed if they're in the hospital, and now they're not there anymore. You can't have that. Your family member is dying in there. Best case scenario with a minimum wage CNA who doesn't get paid enough to care enough. You know what I mean? So then it comes to you all, so that's a whole new responsibility for you all to have to deal with.
Now you're putting that on COVID death. I and it's very difficult for you to go any further than that. Well, and other than it's a COVID maybe related death.
Yeah.
Which is why I added that question about when you're doing the embalming. Were you seeing these clots of just, there's something unusual?
So me and one of our other fellow embalmers at Flora's, we actually had this conversation. And my synopsis of it is, I've been there since 2017, from February 2017, and I was learning, and then I finally got licensed. And in my opinion, from what I see, people, they pass away from blood clots and stuff like that. I think that, there has always been clots in people, and I think there always will be. I can't really say.
Well, that's the definition of a stroke, right?
Well, yeah, well, I mean, you can't really say that, it's, you can't, I don't believe there's any way to differentiate. There's a lot of factual stuff out there that you can read and research about how, this mortician or doctor found this out. But unfortunately enough, I don't know if you can prove that a single clot would be the reasoning why somebody passed. I mean, just because of, through the shot, and I think there's still a lot of unknowns about COVID. We, like Billy said, we all thought we were on the front lines because, even they wouldn't let the families come in. They would let us just walk right in and pick their loved one up. And, it kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit thinking, this don't make sense to us.
Yeah.
But so we would respond and we would do our job. And that's kind of what we've done ever since COVID hit in 2019.
Let me rephrase it slightly then, because that leads on to another question and I'm talking, particularly referencing, some of the increased deaths that we're now seeing, the sudden death syndrome, myocarditis, or whatever it is, sudden heart attacks, and also sort of weirdness. Have you seen an uptick in the sort of, let's say, unexpected deaths? When you see someone who's 90 years old on the table, it's like, well, okay, good innings, fantastic, you've had a great life, carry on. When you see someone of 45, 50, 55, and that number starts upticking, you kind of think, what's going on here? Have you seen any of that where it seems like younger lives appear to be being lost?
Yes. I would say, my view of that is that I think that when somebody's time has come, it's their time to come. I mean, personally, I'm a believer in God, and I think that everything happens for a reason.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that, I don't think that, we can say it's just because of, that if the sudden death syndrome and everything, you can, people, but see, like you said, mainstream media and everything, it's almost like it's always something on TV that's going to grab your attention nowadays. So of course, you're going to flock to that TV saying, well, this 30, 40, 50-year-old passed away, and we're seeing a lot of younger people passing away now, and people are going to eat that up. And then here comes people in the conversation about, oh, well, it has to do with the COVID shot, or it has to do with something else that was.
Oh, I'm not worried about putting anything on whether it was a shot. I'm just saying, are you seeing an uptick in those numbers? Someone can make an assumption.
Well, and at the same time, we ask you these questions not to put you in like in a gotcha moment. But
oh no, not at all.
No. It's kind of one of those things where you are the first in line. You know what I mean? You're the first person to see the families. You're the first person that the families ask these questions about. You know what I mean? Like they're going to ask the doctors questions and everything, but immediately when they get to you all, they're probably going to ask you some crazy questions that a lot of the times you might not even have the answers to. You know what I mean? Because they're entrusting you with such a big part of their loved ones, final moments here.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's huge responsibility.
So they are probably at multiple times they're putting a lot of confidence into you all. You know what I mean? They're putting a lot of trust into you all for what you do.
I think what Simon's trying to get at is, I know we had that, like you said, apparently from 2021, you had that uptick. Has there been another uptick you guys have seen?
And we'll say, I wouldn't say that uptick was necessarily just younger people. I would say it was people in general. And I think that was kind of the height of the COVID wave through Rocky Mount. You know, we had the tracker of Rocky Mount and Franklin County about how many cases that we had and all this stuff. And people would check it every day. And, you know, I think that it's remained steady. But see, another thing that the mainstream media might not be saying, and something that we hear, because, you know, we have our colleagues and everything, is the baby boomers. You know, that was a hot era during that time. Yep. And so a lot of those people are passing away. So everybody thinks, oh my gosh, you know, this is all because of COVID, or, you know, but actually it's because there was a lot of babies in that time. I'm just, you know.
Well, and at the same time, it's a lot about psychological as well, because I believe, and me personally, that your mind, your own personal mind, has a lot to do with determining when you finally pass away. And I think if you're somebody that put a lot of time, effort, and passion into what you did in life, like let's take Bear Bryant for example. If you don't know who Bear Bryant was, he was a head coach, I think multiple stops. Texas A&M was where kind of got his name, but Alabama is where he became a legend. And Bear Bryant retires, and 6 months later, he passes away. You know,
that's
you know
a common thing when
so
life partners.
So when COVID happens, right? A ton of boomers, as you mentioned, a ton of boomers out there are like, well, I'm already ready to retire. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to take my package. I'm going to retire. I'm going to be done with it. Boom, you're out of there. And a ton of those boomers now find themselves without purpose, without a passion. They don't have anything on the side. And so, like Bear Bryant, when you're done with life and you retire and you're done with something you really enjoy and love, then you have nothing else to live for. Something might happen. Boom, you're gone because you don't have that will to fight anymore. So that might be a part of as well. And that might also be a part of the reason why we have such a gap right now in our employment, why nobody wants to work, because all the boomers, when COVID come around, they're like, well, hell, it's time to get out now because, you know, the world's going to hell in gasoline panties. Go ahead and get out, get my retirement, take it, roll with it. Now everybody moves up a rung. All middle management becomes top management. All lower people become middle management. And then now you have nobody on the lower rung of things to work because our population, as far as birth rate,
it's an inverted triangle anyway.
Yeah, there's a ton of factors involved.
There's a very good message there, Billy. It was subliminal and it was a sneaky one. And I think the message there to everyone listening is, if you're going to retire, don't mentally retire.
No, don't physically or mentally retire. Just retire from your job.
Yeah.
But continue to find reasons. And I'm a firm believer in that, because I look at my grandma, God love her. I have 4 grandparents. I was fortunate enough in my life to know all 4 of them. My mom's side of the family, dad's side of the family. Dad's side of the family, a little more raw, rugged, like to drink, party, carry on. That's where I get my outgoingness from. My mom's side of the family, more Christian oriented, more church going, gave me the good heart I've got. You know what I mean? So it's a nice little combination, but I lost both of my grandparents on my dad's side a little bit early. They lost their passions. You know, I mean, they had them taken away from them for
and when one life partner
reasons.
passes away, isn't it strange that within a year the remaining partner dies of a broken heart?
Well, my grandparents on my dad's side had been divorced since I was probably 3 or 4 years old, since the mid 80s, and they both died. Even though they hadn't been together in probably 25 years, they both died a month apart. You know what I mean? Like, there was still some kind of crazy connection or whatever going on there. And that's that side of the family. And then my mom's side of the family, you know what I mean? Like, my grandpa continued to find reasons to keep going. And he lasted quite a while. And now all I'm left with is my grandma. My grandpa passed on a couple of years ago, but my grandma's still going. And I knew that
because she's got something to do, right?
I knew that would be the case because, one, the women are always stronger than the men. And we're going to go ahead and put that out there on this show right now. The women are mentally stronger than men. We are tougher, and we can deal with things that women can't deal with. But at the end of the day, we go first because we have pretty much destroyed our bodies over the years, much more than women have, between partying, alcoholism, beating our heads into other athletes while we're playing sports.
I mean, actuarially speaking, a lady is going to outlive the equivalent male by 4 years. And that was a statistic that was probably been in play for, let's say that was at least 30 years ago when I was messing around with that sort of data. So, you know, they've got 4 years on us.
Easy.
Physically.
My grandma she took care of kids, grandkids, and even the great grandkids. And it was until my first one came along where she was finally to the point where she couldn't watch them on her own for hours on end, but no less my brother's kids.
Now, I've got to ask Dylan another question here, because this one's just...
Well, I got one too, the conspiratorial. Not really a question, more of a statement. No.
Well, see, listen, okay, let's get this one out, because this one just intrigues me. Dylan, you're a young man, and how did you get into the business of funeral?
Well, that's where I was going to go.
Yeah.
Because so that's the person who goes back to what Simon was saying. It ties it back all into why did you decide to do this? You know, what brought you into the business? Why did you try and destroy my fence? Things like that that the listeners really want to hear about.
Good question. Now we get to a brighter subject.
Now, why did you destroy his fence? Really is what the question is.
I can't remember that. I think I did tell him in person on a funeral when I finally met him for the first time. I think so, or I think I told him through an Xbox group chat. So it was one of the two. But
it was during the COVID times.
They told me he was military, so I had to be very polite. You know, he would axe me off right quick or something. But
you put yourself on the X at that point. I mean, you're in trouble.
So really, back when I was, and I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning in a way. Back when I was 15, I had several little jobs around town. I mowed a few yards around, did some landscaping work, a little bit of that, not too big, but something to have some pocket money, especially during the summer months. And then I started actually working at Ippy's, which is a fine restaurant in the county. They do very well, great food. I think we're going to be headed there for Valentine's Day, I believe.
Hey, we spent one of our Valentine's days at Ippy's. Ippy's is a phenomenal restaurant. Jody and Tommy, great people. Always have a good time up there. Been around for quite some period of time. And hey, look, when it comes to steaks in the Roanoke Valley, I will say this first and foremost: if you got the money to do it, once a year, just go spend your $100 and get you a tomahawk ribeye at Frankie Rowland's Steakhouse, which I think we should probably do to celebrate the show here in the very near future. But aside from Frankie Rowland's, when you're going to spend that kind of money, because it's a Wagyu beef,
ooh, now you're talking.
With the exception of that. Let's take Frankie Rollins off. I'm telling you what, Ippy's, you can get the best steak you can get within 2 or 3, 4 counties around here. Easy.
I got a random comment about Ippy's. I want to know why there's boat barriers behind your restaurant.
What have they got? They
got boat barriers, and I know they're from. I want to know if they're from Smith Mountain. That's the reason why I'm asking.
They should be the next to come on.
I bet Jody barriers for a year now to come on the show. She'll come on here eventually. She will.
But yeah, I don't.
Back to you though. You go from grilling steaks or throwing out trash at Ippy's to
I was just a dishwasher, man. I would step over and fillet some shrimp or something like that. But I was a dishwasher, bust a few tables, nothing major. And that was really during my junior year of high school. I didn't really. I didn't want to continue that in a way, great company to work for, but I wanted to look for something different. I've always wanted to.
You picked something different, all right?
Yeah, it's very different. I will say, but I'm leading up to the big shebang, I guess I would say. Ever since I was a little boy, I always liked sports. I liked baseball, I liked football, basketball, whatever it was, you name it. And I still like sports to this day. And so I was like, as a kid, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That was something that, blew my mind. But I quickly found out that, unless you're like Tim Kirkjian on Baseball Tonight or Joe Buck or Troy Aikman, unless you already had a big name or you played the sport, you're not going to make it big, because them guys are knocking down the money. I mean, by just talking about what they used to do. So I was at Ippy's, I decided I wanted to change it up a little bit. And one night, my parents saw Lee at a grocery store and said that, hey, Dylan, and this is the story I got. I'm just saying, backstory, that Dylan is got a interview at another local funeral home just for part-time work, nothing big, just part-time. And I was 16 at the time, and they had to make sure it worked with labor laws. And Lee said, well, how about, you come talk to me, and I'll interview you as well, and I thought, well, it can't hurt. Well, and so here it goes. So I set up a time with him. I came up here. I may have been driving at the time. It was right around that area where I think I was just getting out to driving on my like 16 and 2 months. We're in Virginia at 16 and 3 unless they've changed it. So I walk in and I sit down on the couch, and Ben Clements, our assistant manager, comes out and says hi to me. He says, well, you must be Dylan, and I never knew this guy, and then, I see some of the regulars, the staff coming in, and Mark and Randy and everybody that works there, they were all passing through. And I remember sitting there, and I called my mom. I picked up my phone. I called my mom, and I said, Mom, I don't know if I'm going to like this. I said, this is no place for a 16-year-old boy. I said, it's just not. I said, I'm a little creeped out. I said,
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I just don't know if this is for me. I really don't. And she's like, well, she says, how about you just do it for a few weeks and see if you like it? Well, Lee comes in, he tells me, goes through all the ins and outs, hiring somebody, and and I said, well, I'd like to finish my time, and then I'll come aboard. And he asked me how long, the normal stuff. How long will it be before you get a suit? How long will it be this? And so I started 2 weeks. My initial hire date was February 1st, 2017. Started as part-time worker working visitations with Byron Purdue, who's one of the golf legends down at Willow Creek. They love playing at Willow Creek.
Oh, we know about him.
Yeah. So he gave me my start. Actually, the band I wear every day, Byron gave that to me. It's golf. It says God offers love and forgiveness. And he gave that to me not long after I started working. And actually, coincidentally enough, everything comes full circle. It just seems like it does. But the guy,
funny how that happens.
The guy that I chose, I didn't choose him, but the guy that I wanted to lead me as far as teaching me the trade of embalming and everything, his name's Mark Vest. He works at Flora's as well. And his father, they made these bands for his father's charity fundraiser back in, when they had that. I think it was around 2006, 2007. And so I wear that every day as a reminder to me that a lot of people say I look like Mark and everything. And so, and it's weird how he has taught me. He's given me a gift that because he's great at what he does. And
he's been your mentor.
Absolutely. And he was there through my whole internship from start to bottom. And I tell you, we had some knockdown dragouts, but I'm gonna tell you what, I wouldn't trade him for the world. He's a great guy.
Right on. And you see, I think you're onto something, because the more I think about this, I'm thinking there's a young man who's made a really smart move. Because supply and demand drives business, right?
Well, unfortunately, I guess they always say, of course, when I started this job, they always says, well, you'll never not have a job. You'll always be in business.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
That's an industry that people are dying to get in.
Who was going to crack your first joke, right? That was a slick one. People.
That was slick.
See, I'm going to tell you, people coming to the funeral home, we see people every day, and they're always coming to us. Well, when they come in here, especially people that I know out in the county, and they, they're going to crack a joke on me, and they'll come in and say, well, I bet people's just dying to see you. I'm thinking, yeah. I said, but I want to say, well, you don't know how many times I've heard that one, because they're always coming to me, So
that's the good news, because you don't want you coming to them.
Well, I would hope not. I would hope I'd be able to serve these people a little longer than 22.
But, that to me is, and that falls, we've just come full circle on, you're going to be paying taxes and you are going to be dying. This is a business that has legs. It's got longevity. When you provide this kind of service and you're good at it, this is something that it's one of those businesses that will go through family generations.
Well, I tell you, I'll be honest with you. When I first started at the funeral home, I was so nervous and so scared. Byron took me on a tour to show me the layout of the building, just in case he needed any help with something. He just works visitations as well, and he does some funerals. And when I first started, and I told him, I said, Byron, I said, I know I just met you. I said, I'm willing to do whatever you need me to do because, I try to be a hard worker and I try to give 100% effort. I said, but I will not touch no bodies. And that was the first day I ever walked in there. And to sit back now and think, hey, 6 years ago that I was just walking into that place, just past, a little over 6 years, that was my, February 1st, just a few days ago. Sitting back now looking at that, it makes me just, it's so hard to believe that I went to school, got a license to do this, and I love what I do. Lee approached me and, said, you'll have a home here if you go to school and get what you need, as far as, because you have to be licensed to practice this. It's just like a dentist.
Of course you do.
You have to have a license to braid hair in the state. Can you believe that?
That one is a
or
shocker.
To cut hair. It's like, do you not think that people around here are not smart enough to believe, well, hey, if you go to a barber and he screws up 4 sets of hair, then he's probably not going to be a barber very long. Like we've got Yelp. People can figure these things out, but you have to still be licensed for it, which, of course, that's, once again, a whole nother conversation.
License to braid hair.
Yeah, you do. You have to have a
It's just
license
like,
to
you've
braid
got to
hair.
be kidding
it's
me.
freaking ridiculous. It's a tax on the poor, and
Here we go.
They don't understand it.
Here we
They
go.
don't understand it. But for his position though, and you make a great point. Like it's one of those jobs that is almost recession proof because everybody wants that moment, that proper moment, to say the least. But it really does take a person with a certain intellect and empathy, to say the least. Because if I was a funeral director, then it would be anywhere between, if somebody comes in there it'd be like between, shit happens and
You'd be putting your foot in it, Billy.
Exactly. Because,
My humor
I'm sorry for your loss. The shit happens because but you have to find that, happy medium. You have to be somebody that can, because you're not just dealing with somebody or a family that's grieving about a 95-year-old grandfather or grandmother, that you're also dealing with families that lost a 16-year-old in a car wreck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is the difficult things that I don't think people can appreciate that you all have to deal with.
You've got to confront that. And that's a tough one.
I think that you hit it on the head, and that was one thing that I kind of figured we would get around to talking about. People, when they call us and, we're going to give them 100% effort. And that's if we're serving 2 families at the time or 20 families at the time. Because trust me, we've seen, close to 20 at a time, unfortunately. And you get to that point where it's like when you walk in that building, there's an on and off switch. You have to turn it off, turn it on at the different times, And some people do. Some people know what we go through. But then there are some that don't realize that, hey, we do have lives outside the funeral home where maybe our hobby is playing Xbox or going fishing or going to the Rail Yard Dogs hockey game. People don't realize that, we're humans too.
You put your pants on one leg at a time, the same as me.
Exactly. We're all the same, and it's exactly like Billy said. When that time comes where we do face difficult cases that come in, the family's grieving, but we're grieving right there with that family because, even though that we might not be related to them, we still see that hurt that they're going through. And that is one of the unspoken jobs of a funeral director that I don't think a lot of people pick up on.
You have to have empathy.
We need to kind of absorb some of that.
Gets on my case all the time about not being empathetic enough.
You need to absorb some of that from them to let them know, hey, everything's going to be okay. We're going to help you through this, and we're going to be here with you as long as you need us. And let them know that there's somebody that's there to help.
And that's where I would struggle.
Yeah.
That's a burden. That's a huge burden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, man, how does a young guy like want to get into this? It's just kind of because every person I've ever seen is like an older gentleman. And all of a sudden, I'm like a young man shows up today, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. I'm like,
it's a good thing it happens, though. It's a good thing because
absolutely.
there's no way. There's no way I could do it. As I mentioned earlier, it's somewhere in between of shit happens, and I'm sorry for your loss, and that's probably the extent of how I would be because you need empathetic people,
Oh, yeah, like, you go through that process.
Yeah, exactly. And to walk them through not only, the process, but, you're also providing the obituaries for the families. You're also helping write those. You're also probably contacting, final resting places.
Social Security, stuff like that.
Veterans organizations.
Instead of them being on the phone for half the day long trying to get in touch with Social Security, we help them with that. And that can be a struggle at times because you got to think. For the United States of America, everybody trying to call Social Security, because I can promise you, every second one person passes away, there's probably, thousands more across the world. The world, that's a good term for it. As far as you got to look at the bigger picture, and it's, like I said, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That's what my dream job was, and this is where I landed. But I can say that after 6 years of doing this, and after you get your license, you feel so proud, and you're thinking, well, I can go anywhere and I can go anywhere and work this job. I can go to Tennessee, I can go to Florida, I can go to California, but really, it's like me and Lee talked about the other day, is that I know that if I'm here in this county, I'll be able to serve those people who I've looked up to. It's like they tell you in school, and you got to think people come all over the East Coast to some of these schools. They say you're going to bury your friend's grandparents, your friend's parents, and potentially even your friends. And yes, it's so people may look at that as a burden, and it is true.
Or even your friends' kids.
And unfortunately, that's a sad thing that can happen as well. But when people look at it that way, in my opinion, I think that I am blessed, and I am grateful enough to have found a job in this county that is going to allow me to help the people that make this community great. And see, that's what y'all are based on.
That's a great approach.
That's awesome.
Yes, making the community and building on that, but also having somebody that's local enough that everybody knows everybody, kind of like Cheers. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows everybody. And that's what we have here in Rocky Mount. But, I love seeing people, especially visitors come in the funeral home, people that I've seen and got to meet and know, and they come in and, they look at you and they have a smile on their face because they see you there. And I just love that I'm able to help people in that way. Of course, in this world, you have to have money to be able to live. That's how the world works in a way, unless you're a wilderness man and just, living off the land, which can happen. But
which is like the majority of our audience.
But everybody doesn't think like, oh, well, the funeral home's making a lot of money. It's not about the money, really. It's not. Yes, you do get paid, pretty well as far, depending on your locality. I bet people in New York are making a lot of money. But I will say this, is that the job that I know is if I go home tonight and I get a call at 12 o'clock at night and it's somebody that I know that I'm going to be helping serve them, and they're going to feel that warmth when I walk in the room to be able to assist and just listen to them. If you just listen and talk to people, everybody's down to earth. I think there's good in everybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But there has to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
There has to be.
It's like a funeral song that's really getting played a lot is like the Luke Bryan song. I don't know if y'all are into country music, but most people are good.
Yep.
That song has a lot of truth to it. I think that there's good in everybody, and I think that if you just give them a minute to talk, you may find out something you don't know. See, when I walked in here, I didn't know much about Billy and Simon, and I've come to know all of y'all.
Well,
really,
you've our sincerest apologies.
Sorry about that. Your reputation is going to be shattered now that you've been on this show. But I think you've explained that there's a lot more to this job. I feel as though I've been educated.
Yeah. Well, and
by the way, you are the first man to show up here wearing a tie. Not even Holland Purdue rocked him with a tie, did he? No, I don't think he did.
I can't say.
No,
I can't remember.
I don't think he was on that. He was in casual.
Yeah.
So I commend you on the tie there, Dylan.
Well,
very good job.
Well, I do have to admit, I did just get off of work, and like Billy said, he lives right below the funeral home. Unfortunately, we did have a busy day with a lot of funerals. However, I will say that I believe even if I didn't get off work, we do all, especially when we're doing public events like this, even though
you're representing.
Exactly. You're representing your company, and you want to represent it well.
Oh, yeah. I think you've done a splendid job.
Yeah.
Whilst I've got to come up with something now, because yesterday was a very big day for me, because I feel vindicated to a certain extent.
Hold on. Why do you feel vindicated?
Mahomes and the Chiefs. Oh, yeah, now you want to talk about it. You knew it was coming, Billy. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy. What a glorious victory.
Well, first off, this is episode 101. We should really be talking about this on Friday to start off 100th episode, because technically that's the next one that people are going to be listening to. But all I got to say about that is go back and, of course, listen to the episode before this one, which will be the 100th, if you're confused.
And we'll go into great depth.
And as I will talk about in that show, that I'm perfectly fine. Look, I can acknowledge the fact I think Mahomes is a phenomenal quarterback. I can also acknowledge the fact that we were robbed of a good ending of that game because of a ridiculous holding penalty that would not have changed the outcome whatsoever, because that ball was completely overthrown. I didn't care who won on either side. I just wanted to be entertained. Look, as long as you can acknowledge it's the bread in the circus, then you can enjoy it. And that's what I try and do. Like, I know I'm sitting there watching these commercials, and I'm like, man, this is the bread in the circus right here. But I'm still going to be trying to entertained by it.
Oh yeah, I was very disappointed with the fumble call.
There should have been a field goal. That holding penalty was ridiculous. Should have been a field goal right there. And Philadelphia should have had their couple of minutes. And I don't even like Philadelphia. I would prefer it. End of the day, you come and ask me, who do you want to win the game? Kansas City.
That's all you got to say, Billy. Thank you very much.
That's what I want to do. But I still feel like we were robbed of a good ending. We were robbed from 2.5 minutes of Jalen Hurts doing his finest work. We were robbed. And that's all I wanted to see. I wanted to see him come back down the field and entertain me. If Kansas City lost, so be it. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. That's who I prefer to win. I don't care to the least. All I wanted was for the love of God, for not Vegas and the refs to decide the ending of that game. That holding penalty was ridiculous. It was to a point to where Philadelphia had no opportunity to defend themselves. No, force them to kick the field goal, and let's see what they can do in reverse. Maybe they go to the field, kick a field goal themselves. Now we go to overtime. Now you get more Super Bowl commercials, you bunch of morons. You get more commercials. You get more airplay. You get more time. And instead...
Yeah, I think the referees, I think the two decisions that we're talking about, I think could easily... have been reversed and they should both have gone the other way. That was a touchdown. It was a fumble. It was a fantastic touchdown. That would have helped me
win a lot of money too.
Yeah,
but I still, it is what it is.
But anyway, we'll leave that one alone.
It is what it is. That's a big part of which should be the Appalachian. The State of Appalachia 100th episode. We'll talk about that a little bit. Now we talk about it in this episode, maybe a little less, because what I want to do in that show, now that you're listening to, go back and listen to it, we have questioned Simon.
I'm so confused.
But I do have one thing.
We have questioned Simon's secret intelligence. Simon might be CIA. Go back and listen to the last episode, and you'll understand what we're talking about.
Oh, man.
But I do have one thing I do want to add. I was able to watch the Super Bowl with my fiance and her family and some of their friends, and her mom is a diehard Eagles fan. She's been an Eagles fan for, as long as I can remember. It's when I came into their family. And, I was rooting for the Eagles. I really was, because, a part of me is like, well, I don't want them to win, because then, I'll have to hear it until next season. But then the other thing, I was like, you know what? I said I would love for the Eagles to win. But the thing you get is you can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that man is a machine. And Andy Reid, with that win, he became the leader and the most winningest coach in Chiefs history, and he is still the winningest coach in Eagles history. But I do want to give a shout out, which, it would be cool if he heard it one day, but I think his name is James Bradbury for the Philadelphia Eagles. Near the end of the game, when he got called for the holding, a lot of the fans, you see it pouring on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, every social media output that you can find, that, Eagles fans were upset because it wasn't a holding call. It was an uncatchable ball. You hear all this stuff, but during his post-game press conference, after the biggest game of his life this far that I'm aware of, I can't remember if he's played for any other teams that were Super Bowl champions or not, but one of the biggest games he's ever played in, he gets up there and he admits and he says to all of the reporters and press conference people that attended, and he says he'd have to admit that he did pull on his jersey and he thought he would get away with it, but the caliber of a person that was able to step up there and admit at that point in his life that, he did do that, and that you can make the point that maybe that was the controversial and crucial call that, inevitably gave Kansas City the win off of the field goal.
I don't get Simon started.
Well, it takes a lot.
There's a amount of integrity behind that.
Exactly. It takes a lot to get up there and say something like that, especially after a huge game like that. And I just want to commend him for that, because
absolutely,
that is, you don't see that. Most of the people go with, wasn't a penalty, but he stepped up and he was a man about it. And you know what? I think that's good sportsmanship. He knows what he done, and he took that blame. And, but like I said, I will say it, Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes. The stat line was nuts. 3 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown. I think when he had 2 rushing touchdowns, I think that that was a record right there that I think he broke. I don't know if it was Super Bowl history or how that lined up.
It was a great game.
I mean, that was probably one of the best Super Bowls I watched. It was better than watching when I think it was the Rams played the Patriots, and it was 13-3, and that was such a snooze fest. It just wasn't. It was just boring.
You just look at the scoreline, and you're just going to go, you know what? That had to have been a great game. Even if you didn't see it, you look at that scoreline, kind of think, that was a nail-biter to the end, high scoring. It was dynamic. It was fast-flowing. It was changing from one side to the other. It was awesome.
When Patrick Mahomes, he got hurt right before the half, I did have a feeling, though. I was like, you know what? I think that he's going to come back in this second half and light it up. I mean, it's just, he was down all year. There were several games, the Chargers, the Raiders, he was down, and they mustered up a comeback. And, like I said, I've always liked sports. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, and you know what? If this is the closest I ever get, I'm fine with it. I just like talking about football and anything else you have.
You put the ball in Mahomes' hands inside those 2 minutes, and there's only going to be one outcome.
And it's like last year in the AFC Championship game. Drove down the field, won the game, and the Bills were mad. And, it is what it is. Actually, I think because of that game, I think they changed the rules now in the postseason where both teams get a chance with the ball, touchdown on the first drive or not. I think they did change that rule. So, but like I said, Patrick Mahomes with Brady retiring, unfortunately, I like to see somebody different every year win it because, it's not fun when the same team wins it unless you're a fan of the Chiefs. I get it.
Well, if he does it with that element of entertainment, I don't think anyone could complain.
Well, they're already saying if he keeps stacking up medal like trophies and MVPs, that he could potentially be in the GOAT conversation, the greatest of all time, which he's got a long way to go. I mean, he's only been in the league for what? 6 years, 5-6 years now?
2017.
Yeah, there's a long way to go on that one.
But you're queuing something up. Billy's got a smug look on his face.
I'm listening to the back and forth about football, how we went from embalming to Patrick Mahomes.
I like to have
a gap.
I got a question. So you have a fiance, right?
Yes, sir.
So what do you like? Was your first conversation like, "Hey, girl, I'm a mortician"? Like what? Like is she emo? Like what? What? Well, like this is. I just don't know how you break that subject to a potential girlfriend or fiance.
Well, she had kind of known me for a little while.
So before
it's kind of funny. I was on the Franklin County High School morning show, And they supposedly, her and her friends would
He's
all
got
make fun of me.
media. He's got media experience.
Showbiz.
He has played us.
Oh, I felt dumb when I was on there. You know, just get up there and just say something. But I'd get on there, and we'd always have a good time. Well, her and her friends, supposedly, the story came out, later that they used to laugh at me because I had a strong accent on there, and it was different from everybody else, and and I get it. But she knew me at the time, for some other reasons. But she knew me, and it was I had to take. I was like a batter stepping into the batter's box. It took 3 times of asking her out until she finally went out with me. She knew what I'd done. She knew that there would be times where we'd plan a date night, and I would be unable to go because I had work. But she supports me in my career. She helped me study for my national board exams. She's been there with me through it all. We started dating, and
I bet your future father-in-law's got some great jokes.
Well, yeah, I would guess so. But he's a great man too. He works, actually, he's a captain at the Rocky Mount Police Department, Mark Lovern. He's actually,
wow.
Yeah, he's
okay.
But he's as good as they come. I wouldn't ask for anybody else better to marry into a family with. They've brought me in. They treat me like I'm their own. They really do. I couldn't ask for a better future parents-in-law. I can say that. But no, her name's Caitlin, and she's something else. I tell you, we get along. I don't even know a good analogy to put it, but we have the same interests. She loves sports. She loves watching football. She gets aggravated with me when I like to go home and play hockey on the Xbox. But besides that,
Well, here comes the question. I've got to get this in first before Billy does. Now, the fact that your future father-in-law is Captain Mark, I was wondering if I can get a get-out-of-jail-free ticket for a speeding ticket that it's almost inevitable I'm going to get running through town at some point in time. I just want to put that
What
out
does a
there.
volunteer fire captain have to do with
Is he
your
police or
tickets?
fire?
Fire.
Police.
He's
He's
police.
police.
Oh, he's police.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay. I stand
Now you
corrected.
listen to your own
I
podcast.
stand.
But I'm not trying to gloat or nothing, but I did do volunteer fire. But ever since I got into the funeral home, I haven't really
beat you
had
to it,
time
Billy.
to do it. Right?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and I wanted to get into that on this show, but I'm not sure how familiar people are. But of course, one of our first. God almighty, this is 101. One of our first 10 to 15 episodes, we had James Nagy on here. And if you don't know who James Nagy is, go to the Facebook website. You might be from Franklin County if you remember. And there are tons of great stories from Franklin County people, Franklin County lore, legends, photographs in there from, all the high schools used to be around here back in the 50s or whatever. But James also did a couple of books. I've got a couple of them here behind me. Had him on the show and talked about them. One of my favorite parts of his book about the Franklin County was the fact that back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and that range, that Lynch Funeral Home, which while we're talking about funeral home, that's just one of the ones that have been in here for a long time. They also owned the ambulance service.
Oh, no.
And
that's a conflict of interest, surely.
That's exactly what I thought. I asked James, I was like, what is going on here? I mean, you mean that back 100 years ago, essentially, 80, 90 years ago, that the same people that would come and provide what you would think would be life-saving, procedures would also be the same people who also would arrange your funeral.
Oh, they did it all back in the day.
There's a Monopolies Commission question there, isn't there?
Incentive do you have to save the person? You're he's an idiot anyway, and he done shot himself 3 times.
His family's got money.
His family's got money, and we're coming here to pick him up. We're going to make a little bit of money off of this.
It's not a pauper's grave for this
but
one.
We're also going to make money off of funeral. You know what I mean? Like
It'd be a win-win, wouldn't it?
That was a yes. Yes, that was a thing.
It all goes back in, I guess that started in 70s, 80s. I don't know if they did it in the 90s as far as around here, but I'm kind of glad we got away from that because it's like,
I would hope
if you, but if you but seriously, if you think about
bleeding,
it,
but
if you
we're
get
gonna make a whole lot more money off of his death than we are saving his ass.
Yeah, but if you go to mostly the ambulance service was basically still to remove. It's like if there was a call, back in the day, and it's changed. For all the viewers out there, we're not like this anymore. Usually, we get a confirmation of which funeral home you would like to choose. There's your disclaimer. But as far as what it was, they used to be. It's like a race to who could get there first, and that's the stories I hear. Really. And it's because of
between funeral directors.
Yeah,
so they were pretty much driving down 40.
The ambulance chasers.
The original ones, they were driving down 40 in their hearses, bumping and banging, tearing off bumpers to get there.
Well, it wasn't
first.
Daytona, I can say that. It wasn't Daytona.
Let's imagine it being Daytona.
But it's Franklin County. I mean, it's moonshiners. Can you imagine, moonshiners?
Say maybe Callaway, but not Daytona, right? But no, so you got to think that when all that started, this was before cell phones. This was before that, where we had, we have an app on our phone that we have, a spreadsheet of saying, well, this is where they're located. So it was word of mouth, or
yes.
You would get a page on a pager, or you would hit your landline.
Hey,
and
Jim Bob, he just passed on. Y'all better get up here quick.
Make it quick.
And it's kind of, and that's just kind of what it's kind of evolved to, is a more formal way to go about that business, and you used to go and, pick them up. But but like I said, I am glad they got away from that, because, can you only imagine an ambulance coming? They're trying to save somebody. And this was way back. And, they say, okay, well, would you entrust us for these services? I would feel terrible. I'm glad it's not that way, because I think that's so heartless to be that way. But that's just the way the times were back then, and we've evolved to having good technology.
Let me just
ethics.
let me just say, I don't think that back then, I think if somebody showed up in an ambulance in this town, 70 years ago, and the ambulance happened to have a Lynch Funeral Home sponsor on the side of it, I still think that person driving had the dignity and respect to do everything they probably possibly could to save that individual. I think just back then it was just a thing. Exactly. It was just a thing. I don't think they probably, now, today, yes. I think today, if somebody showed up, there not Flora's or anybody in this town specifically, I'm just saying there probably are funeral services out there in this world, because in the degeneracy we find ourselves in, I think would show up and be like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's $20,000 to save them, $50,000 to bury them. You know what I mean? And they would probably make that decision. But I don't think in this community, I think Franklin County has always been a great place for people and humanity. And I think they probably, back in the day, it's just a funny thing to bring up. It's just a funny conflict of interest. But I find it hard to believe that they really had that thought process back in the day.
People need to know, too, that I think still now, I know a lot of the fire departments and the rescue squads are still volunteer basis. So if you think about it, if you had a funeral home paying for that services, a lot of places didn't have good ambulances for a while.
That's the thing.
So that was the thing. They were probably just sponsoring it because they could.
Yeah,
and see, that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about. That when you go out and we serve a family, whoever it may be, because we serve everybody, of all nationalities, all religions. We do whatever we can to make their services what they want. It's more than just going out here on a funeral. It's about everybody you interact with at the grocery store, at Sheetz, even if you're out of your normal funeral attire, a suit and a tie, because the impact you may leave on somebody, say, hey, well, I know this kid that worked at Flora's, he seemed like pretty down-to-earth guy, well, maybe we'll call them. It's more, people, it's more than just...
You're constantly on duty.
Exactly. And it's just like an undercover police officer in a way, because you always have to have that compassion to where, say if somebody, people come up to me all the time and say, hey, y'all did such a great job. Y'all buried Mom a year ago, and, we just want to thank you. We haven't been able to thank you since then, and it is what it, but...
your actions outside of the job reflects on the job.
Absolutely.
So I see exactly what you're getting at there. It's not as though you could, come rolling out of a strip joint, completely liquored up with a couple of hookers on your arm,
and see that,
and then go
exactly.
Well, I mean,
well, see, he's right though, because back in the day, that used to be exactly what he said. You couldn't portray that, and still, especially in our small community here, you can't do that. No. I can't go out. I'm just saying, I can't go out somewhere local and just get tore up, because the fear of and,
it's
and
a
I'm
reputation.
And that's not something that I really enjoy doing. But it's like if somebody sees me and say, "Oh my gosh, well, look at who they've hired." Whether and I'm not saying it's just us; it's everybody, and it doesn't have to be a funeral home. It can be
So you're on call 24/7. Is really where we're going. With
I will say I've
that job
calls,
becomes tougher.
Yeah, I mean, you always have to be ready to do something for somebody when they want it. That's where it goes. But I did have a question before I forget, because sometimes I do forget real quick.
Hold on, we're getting a question for us.
Oh, yeah.
This is a rarity.
Well, and it's
the
to build.
This is a rarity.
But it's something that we had kind of talked about. So I don't know if you can see the people that subscribe to Patreon or the people that view. How far is your coverage? Do you have people all over the East Coast? Or
we have people, I have looked, and I don't even know how accurate it is, but even
West
if it's
Texas.
just minimally accurate, yeah. We go as far as into West Texas, up into New York, down into Florida. We even have a handful of people that listen in England, France.
Because they know Simon, right?
Yeah, well,
That's right.
that's probably a big part of it. Yeah. So, I mean, the majority of our listeners are coming from Franklin County into Bedford County and Roanoke County, and then it starts dispersing outwards towards other parts of Appalachia. But, yeah, we do get a ton of listens in West Texas, Florida.
You've just spurned a thought. I had a hearse experience in Florida.
Oh, God. And we'll get to West Texas after this to talk about, anyway.
So, I was still living down in Turks and Caicos at the time, and I was doing I think I was doing my master's ticket up in Florida. And one of my mates from the island happened to be living in Fort Lauderdale. So I stayed with him, which was a disaster. So I quickly moved into a hotel because I needed to focus on this course, and this guy was just a lunatic. Anyway, he had an apartment. He lived on the canal. It was great, but he was just wild. I'm not saying I wasn't, but he certainly was. And for some reason, his mode of transportation was a former hearse. So it's this black extended limo that's a hearse. And that's what you drive around. And that was his runaround. I thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, we went out to this bar.
Just a bit morbid, but funny, yeah.
We went out to this bar and got tore up. And the looks of everyone as we kind of rolled in. And I'm laid out in the back of this hearse, being taken away from this bar. Anyway, just I thought he'd share that little bit of sick humour.
Less likely to be pulled over as well. I mean, who wants to pull over a hearse? You know what I mean? It's like, well, he's kind of veering in between lanes. Well, maybe it's just grief. I'm not even going to mess with this right now. So hey,
now there's another story that relates to a Benny Hill show that I was loosely connected to back in the day. Benny Hill did this particular show at the City London Freeman School, which was the rugby club, one of the junior rugby clubs that I played for. And they had the bar in the grounds. And they were doing this Benny Hill show there for 3 or 4 days. And we thought, as a rugby club, we'll open up the bar as sensible people at 9 o'clock. And
in the morning.
Okay. And the crew would come in there. And I don't know if anyone recalls, I don't remember the guy's name. He was the big, old, tall guy, looked a bit like Lurch from Benny Hill. He was a key character in these Benny Hill stories. So anyway, we'd opened up the bar, and it was a funeral sketch at this beautiful old country manor, which was the school. So we start. This guy clearly had a drinking problem. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, he'd pretty much gone through half a bottle of whiskey, and was on the precipice of finishing it by 9:30. The film crew comes in, and the producer, where's so and so? I forget the guy's name. Big tall fella, Lurch, I called him, and he was absolutely rat-arsed. And anyway, the producer's coming in, the film dude, whatever. Where's so and so? I said, well, he was, and they asked me. It was like, it felt like I was being interrogated. Was he in here? I said, well, yes, he was. The bar's open. We opened the bar early for you. He goes, well, was he drinking? Well, I said, well, it's a bar, right? Yeah, he was drinking. How much was he drinking? Actually, he was drinking quite a lot. What was he drinking? I said he was drinking quite a lot of whiskey. He goes, oh, we can't find him. I'm like, well, he left maybe 10 minutes ago. I mean, he's late for the shot, right? Yeah, we can't find him. He's disappeared. I'm like, oh, crap. We start sending out the search parties. Anyway, round the back of the clubhouse, they had all their props. One of the props was obviously a casket. And we eventually realised that was the place, one of the few places we hadn't looked. And there was Lurch, one of the Benny Hill lead characters, passed out in his own coffin. Completely legless. Useless. I thought it was so funny.
Billy, you told me he had some wild stories.
He does.
You don't even know the half of it. I think for the nature of this episode, he has been fairly PG.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I keep it. I'm trying to keep it PG,
and we should, and for multiple reasons, and you know, and I think it's a testament to this town as well. And I'll use this as a story to kind of relate to this because one of my close friends, C.J. Arrington, he's been on this show. Go back to our 9/11 episode. He was also on the Abe Naff episode. He's been on a handful of them. We grew up together. Loved him like a brother for the longest time. He comes on and helps us out, you know, here and then with some shows. He's a firefighter in Roanoke, so he goes and does things that I could never even imagine doing. You know, even being a military veteran, like I wouldn't want to do it or anything like that. But his grandfather was, you know, the patriarch of Arrington Bussey Funeral Home. And Arrington Bussey, for the longest time in this town, was one of the, you know, the big names in funeral homes and stuff. And he passed away a couple of years ago. You know, I went to the viewing or whatever, you know, for CJ for being my buddy. And I asked him, because it was over at Okies in Roanoke. And I asked him, I was like, CJ, I said, you know, your grandfather was just a massive, you know, funeral presence in Rocky Mount his entire life. Arrington Bussey Funeral Home was here. It was right in the middle of town. Why did he, you know, why Okies? Why over here in Roanoke and Okies? And he said, because he was an inspiration, I think, for Lee and them at Flora, and he was also a big part of Lynch Connor here in town, which is the other name. He said he had such respect for both of those places that he decided to go to a third party here in Roanoke as not to, you know, offend either one of those because he had such a part in it. And I think that is a massive, like, show of how
very
tight
respectful, isn't it?
Exactly, this community is. Like, he didn't want to show preparation to either one of those in his final days. And this is somebody that was big into the business. And I think that goes, you know, the whole point of the story is to show how much respect I think this community as a whole has for not only the Flora Funeral Service, but, you know, the other ones we have in town, the Lynch Connor. Like, they're all here to service you. I know we have the Flora guys on here today because they're my neighbors, and because every now and then I like hearing stories off of my front porch. I actually made a post here back in the summertime. Let me just share this with you all. Because I said only in Appalachia can I sit here in my back porch at a funeral home and hear people in the parking lot yelling, across the parking lot, mind you, hey, y'all want to race that thing, as they're walking out from a funeral procession.
That's pretty good.
That's what I heard. I heard that. I was sitting outside, grilling out. I heard people leaving a procession. But, you know, it just goes to show you everybody, I don't want to say celebrates, because maybe that's a little bit morbid, but they appreciate, celebrate, whatever you want to. Funerals
celebrate
in different
life.
ways.
Celebrate life.
That's what the whole point of it is.
Yeah.
And to be in this community, you know, I know you're here representing Flora, and as for me personally, not only are they my neighbors, not only do we share a fence that this gentleman here today has tried to tear down with a push mower on multiple occasions. You can make up for that, by the way, employees at patreon.com/getontap. But that's neither here nor there. But my family has used Flora throughout the years, and it has been nothing but respect. It has been nothing but, the utmost amount of properness and grievance and things that my family needs to be able to deal with when it's coming to those kind of things. And I could probably say the same for the other services here in town. You know what I mean?
You're not going to last long if you're not doing it the right way.
So it goes in both directions. But this town, for Mr. Arrington to have that purview, for him to say, I respect both in this town, that just goes to show you that it really is a testament to our community here. It really is.
So
it is.
So the part of, and of asking you kind of what was y'all's broad spectrum is because I think another thing that would be interesting to make a point to all your listeners out there, whether you're in Texas, whether you're in the UK, yes, some of the state laws may differ or country laws, how that works. But when Billy approached me about coming on here, and we kind of got to talking about it and kind of what we can do. I mean, we kind of kept it short so we could save some, material for the podcast. I told him, I said, we want to do this, and I didn't come on here to necessarily, people say drum up business or, to get people to see, it's not about seeing us. In this county, we have Flora Funeral Service, we have Connor Bowman Funeral Home, and we also have Hamler Curtis and Stanfield.
Stanfield.
We have
right
4 funeral homes here in the area.
I know Kevin Bowman. I know Kevin fairly well.
Yeah, Kevin, but he is a great gentleman.
Super nice guy.
Yes.
Yep. A lot of time for him.
And so we have funeral homes here in the area, but this is for the broader spectrum. What I had in mind for this show is coming on here and being able to talk with y'all about some different things that, like you said, people may have questions about. And like I said, if you're in Texas, whether you're in the UK, that this could be informative to not only those people in Franklin County, but to hit the broader spectrum across the country, whoever wants to listen to it, somebody that, and especially, and I don't know if I would say this right now because we could get flooded with calls, but if anybody ever had any questions, we're more than happy to answer. If you have anything, I would recommend calling a funeral home in your state, as we may give you some false information because every state differs. But if you have any questions, let us know. And as far, kind of what Simon kind of touched on pre-planning and stuff, that was one thing that I did want to say, whether, like I said, again, whether you're in Texas or the UK, if you want to come in and talk about prearranging, you don't put the burden on your family, as we spoke of burdens earlier, because that's one thing that we do see from time to time is when a family comes in, well, I really don't know what, mom or dad wants because, they really didn't like to talk about it and we don't know which path to go. But if you come in and, it's not all about prepaying. If you do prepay, it kind of locks that in and your price will merge with the times. But if you just come in and put something on paper, it gives your family a roadmap. Everybody thinks that we're in it to, to get people in and drum it up and, however you want to make your analogy fit to that. But really, like Billy said earlier, we're here to serve y'all. We wouldn't make it 32 years in Rocky Mount if we wasn't serving the people like they're our own family. And that's one thing that Lee told me when I first started, or right around that time, is that you treat everyone as family. And I'll never forget, he said these words: when you do come into work, as far as your normal work day, and I want to be able to phrase this right. If you love your work, you'll never work a day in your life.
There you go.
Now, and I will say, I'm human. I make mistakes. I will say there are some days, and everybody has those days where you go in, you're like, oh my gosh, I wish this day would I wish this day would end. But then there's also those days where you feel like you could go a few more hours because you've seen something, you've heard something. A simple thank you has pushed you past a problem that you're dealing with, whether it be helping a family with a tragedy. Everybody thinks it's about the almighty dollar nowadays. It's about being there for the people and really, like I said, giving back to this community. And if this show can reach a broader audience across the country, you know what? I'm all for it.
Yeah. I mean, those sentiments are they're taken to heart. I think if you've had the foresight to make a last will and testament, which I would recommend every person does, you really should go hand in hand with funeral arrangements, and take that burden away from a grieving family. I mean, that's just common sense. To me, it's something that would be worthy advice. So, yeah, I mean, right on board.
You know, one of the questions we always get is people call and they say, well, somebody in their family is close to passing and they've never dealt with this before. Because, you know, there's still people in this county, you know, we think we're real close, and we are, but there's still people that have never experienced death. And so they kind of call, or they'll come in and say, well, so-and-so, you know, they're about to pass away, or somebody in our family we dearly love is about to pass. And we don't exactly know what to do. And so that's where we come into play. And, you know, it's not, you know, we're not, people say we're salesmen. No, it's like, you know, if I'm working with a family, we have a selection room where we have all of the different caskets that we have on our floor, and we, you know, sectionals, and then we have urns if they were choosing cremation. I go in there and I say, you know, I'm going to give you whatever you want. You know, I'm going to be able to, you know, as long as it's in stock, because I know we were in a supply chain demand, you know, sort of issue
country's
there.
in a supply chain
But
crisis.
Put mine in a Folgers coffee can, like in The Big Lebowski.
that I tell you, that's one of the greatest scenes, and it's funny. After I went into this, I watched that movie. But before I get off my topic, I do want to say something else about that. But before I get off the topic of the selection room, you know, I don't go in there, you know, and I you know, if you ever see anybody that's worked with me and that I've been their director through their arrangement process, I go in there and say, look, you know, whatever y'all want, you know, I'm going to try my best to make it happen for you. I can't promise everything, but I'm not going to come in here and sell you something, because that's not me. You know, let it be up to the family what they want to decide.
Hopefully at that point, that decision has been made already, right? Is it a cremation? Yeah. Is it a burial? Is it, you know?
Yeah, at that point when we go in the selection room, we get kind of what they want to do. Yeah. But as far as The Big Lebowski goes, when
no coffee cans.
Well, when I watched that movie, I was so blown away, because I really didn't see it coming. But when they went in and met with the funeral director, and he says, oh my gosh, this is how much it's going to be just to cremate him. And he was like, y'all got a Ralph's around here? And goes gets the coffee can. I was like, you know, but see, and I will say, you know, of course, you know, everybody's like, well, you know, he's a businessman per se. He's a funeral. Why would he be saying this? But, you know, some family have heirlooms that they like, you know, that's either a famous, you know, family mason jar that's been passed down, or, you know, something like that of that nature that they have used for an urn. And, you know, and I'm not going to sit here and, you know, lie about it, because it's the truth. You know, that's just how we're a very, you know, rural community. And if that's what they want, we're going to make it happen, because, you know, you can say, well, if they, you know, if they don't bring in an urn, you know, you kind of get cut out of that. And I don't look at it that way. I say it is, you know what? They appreciated you for doing this for them. So hopefully they come back because they appreciated you, as like I just reiterated, you did that for them. You know,
right,
it's all about connections, being nice to people, and just treating people right. You know,
I mean,
the world would be a lot better place if people did that.
I mean,
absolutely.
Here's what I want, and tell me, can y'all provide this service? This is what I want when I die. I want to be, you know, if you want to have a little service for my wife and family, and I say my wife because I'm probably going to die a long time before she does. She better not get remarried either, because I plan on being around mid 60s, early 70s. That's what I'm shooting for. You know, if you want to have a service or whatever, freeze me. I don't want to be embalmed. Just freeze me, put me out there in a pine box, let everybody come in there and say what they got to say. And then I want to be thrown in a hole and be, you know, pretty much worm food and food for an oak tree or something that produces nuts.
How appropriate.
Because for the rest of eternity, I want people to be able to appreciate my nuts.
To hold your nuts.
Exactly. But no less. But it's because I think an oak tree in my honor with maybe like a little plaque below it would be much better than a marker. You all can provide those services. If I want to get thrown in a hole and be tree food, y'all can do that.
And I would tell you, you're the first person, and unless I have not been aware of this, I think you're the first person that's actually asked us about that. That is up and coming in the industry, where they put you, basically, he's with the roots of a tree, and they put you in a cocoon, and you're under the tree, and then, of course, you know, that can happen, you know, and that's something we could look into together. You know, I would be interested in how that works.
Because that's what I want. I want to do that down at my farm somewhere. I want to be in an oak tree and my body. And that, I mean, that oak tree will probably last longer than a grave marker will.
But
it will give back to the world better than a grave marker, in my opinion. Will.
But the interesting thing is, I can't remember where I first saw the diagram of when they started sending them out that this is up and coming.
I think it's a Japanese thing. I think the Japanese.
Well, when they came out with it, where you're in the cocoon, they kind of had your body like you were in the womb,
in the fetal position.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I was like, that's actually a cool concept because you came into the world and you were at that place, so you go back to that position. That's just I thought that was
good karma. I get it.
It's very interesting.
And why not? You know what I mean? I mean, I think that is it's an honorable way to go because you're giving back to the earth. Like if I'm embalmed and I'm in a tomb that's inside a casket or whatever, I mean, I might be worm food at the end of the day, but I'm just in a, Well,
at the end of the day, there as well, you're taking up valuable space.
Exactly.
Think of the amount of real estate that is taken up with graveyards.
Well, actually, the New York, a lot of the parks in New York are actually old graveyards.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like that my grandfather took me to like where my great grandfather was buried, and it was underneath a massive poplar, and he just kicked the dirt and was like, "Yep, this is where he's at."
I mean, that's
kind of cool. Is this up in a random holler?
Yeah.
That's how life was.
Just knew he was there.
Well, I would like to talk about some stuff about Kentucky because how Kentucky, the culture of Appalachia of Kentucky. If you guys want to, if we can do it a little bit later, if you got a point or what, you have something to say, or I can talk. No. I like to talk about a cultural point because my family's from Kentucky, and Hillbilly Elegy talks about this.
Yes, which I watched this past weekend, which I'm going to read the book next, and we're going to have a talk about this.
Now, how far are you away from Harlem, Kentucky?
It's Ashland, Kentucky. I've been around Harlem.
That's close.
Harlem, because, that's where Justified was based, and that's a good show, too, if you ain't seen it.
I know. I mean, trust me. It's Kentucky. I know. I've been
Justified is Harlan, Kentucky.
I've got some stories.
It's also
about
one of the
Kentucky.
greatest songs ever written by Daryl Scott.
Yeah.
You'll Never Leave Harlan Alive.
Yeah.
That's a great, great song.
But the procession, my wife and I were going somewhere in the county, and there was a procession going by. So I stopped, and she's like, "Well, which way are you turning?" I was like, "Well, I'm turning, right," but the procession was going left. So, I could have went. But I said, there's a Kentucky cultural aspect that when a procession goes by, everybody stops.
You stop.
Everybody stops. Around here, they don't really do that as much. But, I mean, even in Kentucky.
They used to,
but I'm hoping we can get that back. Because it's awesome. Because when my grandfather passed away, we had to go. Basically, it's a really busy highway, and it was really nice to see like the big rig stopping, like everybody just stopped. Even going through town, like just everybody stopped. People stopped, doing what they were doing around the cars, and just it stopped. And I thought that was that they talk about that it's lost here because I've stopped a few times going the opposite way of a procession, and people honk at me, and I'm like, I'm kind of from Kentucky, like that's what we do. I'm going to keep up the tradition.
Get over it.
I'm going to keep up the tradition.
Yeah.
Because
you should at least pull your car over for 2 freaking seconds.
Yep.
Turn off your iPod. I should do the same. I should. I mean, because I pass them quite a bit in the big rig and stuff, and depending on the area I'm at, sometimes I keep going, sometimes I won't, but I should probably just do it every single time, whether in my personal vehicle, because it is just it's respect.
It is.
It's respect, for that person for whatever reason, because at some point in time, that person, no matter what they turned out to be in life, was an innocent little small tiny human that had all the opportunity in the world ahead of them, and we all can't really comprehend we can't comprehend the different choices that person made, the different avenues they took to get to where they are in life. But we should be able to appreciate it.
Be respectful in death.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not asking much, is it?
Unless you're one of those specific people that deserve to be put in a wood chipper feet first. And at that point in time, then, but that's a whole different conversation.
Because also Kentucky does Memorial Day a little different too. Like all the families will go to the graveyards. So it's kind of interesting that I know where like majority of my family is buried.
We're going to get into that as well. We're going to get into another episode. I want to get into the Hillbilly Elegy because I have seen so many people talk so much crap about J.D. Vance, about the movie that came out, about his book. And these are all by Appalachia people. Well, Appalachian people who claim to be from Appalachia. And I don't know about the book yet. I got it right behind me. I'm going to read it, but I did watch the movie this past weekend. And if you're irritated about him telling you about how it really was growing up in this area, then you're in denial. Because after watching the movie, I can tell you that's just how people are around here. It's not a detriment to people from Appalachia. It's just how they were. It's just and if you're concerned about the drug aspect or the hillbilliness that's involved with it, then once again, that's like 70% of the people that I know around here.
Yeah.
And
it's a culture.
It is. It is. Yeah. It is a culture. And to be able to pull yourself up from the bootstraps and have all the numbers against you, and to still be able to go to Yale Law School and graduate and become who you are. Look, if people are going to talk crap about you, then they're probably haters in the first place. They're not real Appalachians anyway. Yeah. Like these crazy, wild leftist Appalachians, and I'm speaking about some other podcasts and stuff that I listen to periodically around here. I'm like, y'all are from cities in Appalachia that happen to fall in the Appalachian region, and you claim to speak up for these people in coal country and these people in the hollers, but you couldn't relate to them people if I gave you 100 years, and
not an ounce.
You could not relate to them. Like, you're from the same area and you claim to speak for them, but you really can't relate to them. You can't. You pretend to. You pretend to speak for them.
That's called cultural appropriation, I believe.
If you actually went into those hollers, those people would run you out of there in a second.
Oh, yeah.
You're grifting.
Mainly because
you're grifting.
Yeah. Mainly because, they do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. So, oh my gosh, we have somehow managed to turn this episode into an hour and 50, almost 2 hours. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. But before we leave, is there anything else?
I would like to say one thing as we close. For everybody that was, gracious enough to listen, I appreciate y'all kind of seeing the interest about funeral services and how that kind of plays out. And I appreciate the Appalachian Podcast crew for having me on. I really do. I think
that's our pleasure.
Yeah, I thought it worked well, especially for our community and for people that are, listening to this from afar, and that I hope that somebody gets a little something out of this. I know we had some jokes. I know we had some, tough questions. I hope I was able to answer those to, the best of my ability. But, whether it's us, whether it's somebody, like you said, a funeral home in Texas or a funeral home in the UK. Now, one more question. Are they called funeral homes over there in the UK?
I believe so. I mean, was it a funeral home? Yeah, a funeral
maybe
home.
Maybe a parlor, or no?
Funeral parlor, funeral home. Yeah,
so how can you not answer these questions right now?
I'm a slack jaw.
But, but back to, whether you're in Texas, whether you're here local in Franklin County, if you ever have any questions whatsoever, I mean, this is from the smallest thing to and then if it's the biggest thing you ever think that you have a decision with your life that you need to make, don't hesitate to give us a call. Whoever you're choosing may be, we just felt that this would be a good show to maybe, get people thinking about kind of the future as far as what they want to do and as far as kind of letting them know that we care and that we're only here for them and to serve our community. That's basically why we decided that this would be a good opportunity for us, for everybody really, is to get informed on what funeral service is all about.
Well, I think for one, perhaps you should question your employer and say, why exactly did you nominate me to get thrown into the lion's den here today, and you might be able to uncover what they think about you as an employee.
He's the new PR guy. He should get a pay raise.
Well, it's kind of like I told Lee when I was working visitations, and then when I got my license, I just turned 21, and then that fall of August 2021, I actually got my license to be a funeral director and embalmer. He actually. Through some different things at work, we actually had a director leave. He actually made me the Westlake manager, our Westlake branch down in Hardy, and which, even though I may be the manager on that building, I'm not walking into these guys that's done it for 30 years and tell them what to do. I said, I have respect for my elders, and they've been there for me through everything. But told when this popped up on the email, I will say, y'all slogan. You want to say it for me?
My slogan.
Yeah, that was on the email. You got to baffle them.
Oh, no, I'll let you go ahead.
I can't say that. That's too much for me, right?
I think it's, hold on. Continue on. I'm going to find the exact quote.
He'll find it for you. And I saw that and I was like, well, I think I know who that came from. And I looked up and it was the Appalachian Podcast. And I talked to Lee about it. And he asked me, he says, do you want to do it? And I said, if you think that I've been here long enough, and if you think that, I know enough about the job to be able to go down here and talk to these fellows about it, I would be more than happy to do it. After getting my license, I came off of visitations because, they require me there, through, our daytime shift and being able to do whatever means necessary to get the day done. And, I was like, I do want to do some PR stuff. And so I really enjoyed this opportunity. And I really thank him for entrusting me to come on here and be knowledgeable enough and for, guiding me, all the guys at our work. Our whole staff is great. I mean,
I commend him as well for sending you.
Well, I think you've
early
really
20s individual into the lion's den here.
I think
that's a compliment to us as well.
Well, the last laugh really should be on you, Billy. Because the reason that they sent you is really so that Billy can present you the bill for fixing the darn fence for you with the lawnmower.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know what the quote is that he's talking about?
Oh no!
This is in all my email headers. If you email the page, you're going to get this back in return. It's a W.C. Fields quote, and it says, "If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit." And I think that is. And at the end of the day, look. I don't want people to think about this because we truly do at this show. We care about our community. That's why we do the things we do. That's why we have a ton of people from the community come on here and sit down with us and co-host. That's why we have a wide range of businesses and prospects and people to come on here. And I thought this show right here, we could find a way to make it interesting. And
it doesn't get more diverse with a funeral director, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's just like, man, you can't make this shit up.
Well, we was curious. We was really curious about. Would we really find something to even talk 30 minutes about? I mean, really? Because you just don't know. But I tell you what, y'all are great. Y'all are great.
Well,
I'm telling you.
Well, and look, and as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to Mr. Arrington about his funeral, the respect in this town, and this wasn't. I wanted to do this show because I want people to understand that, just trusting the people in your community, whether it be you guys, whether it be the Lynch Connor people or the Stanfield or the fourth one you mentioned. My apologies. I can't even.
Hamler Curtis.
They've
just been here. I think it's maybe a little over a year or coming up on their 1 year anniversary.
Look, find a way, no matter who it may be, to be able to find those people. And you know what I mean? And I use the Flora people mainly because they're my neighbors. And I just sent them a random message. I sent them an email, said, hey, look, why not let's come down here and have a show about this so people can kind of understand what their options are. But at the same time, I think we could make this an episode where it can be fun, but also informative. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't matter whether it was these guys or the next one. I think everybody in this town is very respectable, and I think they all deserve, So let me just make this straight. Flora isn't giving us anything. They haven't given us any money or anything yet to promote them.
Yeah, that's right.
To promote them. However, I'm hoping many of them will become Patreon subscribers to listen to this episode early. Patreon.com/GetOnTap.
That was very slick, Billy.
I gotta find a way to slide it
So
in there.
I gotta say, as far as everybody's getting their jokes and punchlines in and everything, so I guess we can say we put the fun in funeral tonight.
There we go.
That was a pretty solid.
That was slick.
Look, I want people to know that. Look, this is a process of life. Look. Whatever avenue you decide to take, just know you have different options. You know what I mean? And just find your niche. For me, I just want to be thrown in a hole. That's all I want. I want to be thrown in the hole and turned into a tree. So, generations beyond can appreciate that, and that tree can produce more for our environment, whatever the case. It's not a hippie way to go. I just don't want to be put in a freaking box. If I'm going to come back as a zombie, I at least want to have the ability to climb out of my freaking hole and not be in concrete and and golden.
Interred.
Golden, yes, exactly.
But I don't want to sound like, that I just made, NBC News or ESPN behind some of the famous
One day
commentators.
you will. One day this week. No. One day this will be the famous
You
commentators.
think no, I'm talking about like on TV and they get on there and they say, I just want to say thank you, and they list their whole family.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
I do want to say, though, while I'm on here, I do want to say that if it wasn't for my family, both sides, the funeral home staff, everybody, and even the community, I wouldn't have been able to make it to where I was today if it wasn't for everybody playing a part somewhere along the line. Because, really, it takes every one of us to make a good community, and that's really what it's all about, is helping out your neighbor. Whether it's, the funeral home that one of their, snotty-nosed kids comes down and wrecks your fence, or, whether it's, a dignitary. Really, I mean, I'm grateful for the life that I've been. I'm 22 years old. About to turn 23 in May. And, I think that for such a young age at a funeral home, I think that I matured a lot faster because of the people that I'm around. Everybody's like, well, you work around a bunch of old men all day. No, it's not about that. It's about hearing the stories about the maturity that they bring to the table. And I really think that I've really grown with what, where I've been in 6 years. But like I said, if it wasn't for everybody who's played a part in my life, I don't know if I would be where I'm at today. I don't know what I'd be doing. I may be trying to be a freelance sports broadcast, showing up beside ESPN, trying to nudge them out the way or something.
Trying to have a podcast.
Have you ever watched the show 6 Feet Under?
No, I haven't.
Have you not watched that show yet?
No, I have not.
It is okay. I encourage anybody go watch it. I mean, it's not quite what you would expect, but it is kind of what you would expect. It's a good show. It's a good show, and I've thought about naming this episode 6 Feet Under, but I'm not quite sure if that would be appropriate.
Why not, right?
But the titles.
Well, the thing
Toes
is,
up.
I've heard family plots. I've heard that Family Plots on A&E was a pretty good show when it was coming on. I think it was on just for a couple of seasons. But really, and like I said before, when I'm out of my job, when I go home, I don't go home and watch funeral shows. I'm not.
I would hope not.
But I'm just saying, everybody thinks
but
you're
then
so.
Again, I go watch military stuff.
Well,
so
I will
why
say
not? You should watch 6 Feet Under.
Some of the
You
best
should really
movies.
watch
Now I
that,
have to say, you've seen. I know you've had to see We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, let me say,
Fantastic.
I've talked about Ben, Lee, Mark. I got to say something. Randy Sink, he's our crematory manager. He told me, he says, I want you to go home and watch We Were Soldiers. And I figured we could bring this up since you have a military background. Randy says, when he calls for that broken arrow, he said, it gets good. And I'm going to tell you, Sam Elliott played a great part in that movie.
Yes,
He
he
most
did.
certainly did.
Man,
that was the greatest NCO portrayal I've ever seen in a military movie. I can say that.
I tell you, and it's when I go home, I like to, sometimes it's, go take the fiance out to dinner or go watch a movie or, play Xbox or something like that. Nothing really, extravagant. I don't go home and just say, well, what, I try when I leave.
You don't play funeral parlor music at home in the kitchen whilst you're making dinner.
Exactly. When I leave work, I try to leave it at the door if I can, unless I'm on call that night. But that's kind of what I do. But like I said before, I thank everybody who's been a part of my life so far. They've been a great help, and they always have a shoulder if I'm dealing with something from work. And that's really what makes the world go around for me, is that I know that I have a support system like everybody, like we're a support system to so many people.
Yep. Thank you so much for coming, this evening, having a good chat. It's been fun. It's been informative. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dylan. You've done a great job representing.
I appreciate y'all having me on.
Once again, where can they find you all at? Do you know? Because if you don't, I got it right here.
Yeah, it's our address. If you want to come in and talk to us, it's at 665 South Main Street, Rocky Mount, Virginia, zip code 24151. And if if you're unable to get out and you want to send us a letter or anything like that, or call our P.O. box at the post office is P.O. Box 763 again, and that's Rocky Mount, Virginia 24151. And one more, our phone number, like I said, if you can't get out and you want to use the phone, 540-483-3835. We'll be more than happy to help.
You're a walking directory, Dylan. Good job.
Absolutely.
It ain't Rain Man. I ain't Rain Man yet. So yeah.
Well, and we sincerely appreciate it. And once again, we thank Flora. I will say this as a disclaimer: they have not given us anything, not even so much as a discount or a group discount, and just in case.
Oh Lord,
just
what are you planning, Billy?
Just in case we go commie hunting anytime in the near future.
Oh, there we go.
I'm just kidding. Look, they have not given us anything at all. We brought Dylan on here simply because I just reached out to them and I said, I want to know about the process. I think people should know about the process. I think people should be educated, and I think people should be able to, at the end of the day, come to you all and not think that, as you stated before you come in here, that you're a bunch of stiffs or anything like your personalities. I think we've had a hell of a show. We've had a really good time with this. We've somehow managed to turn a show with a funeral director into something that we laughed at about, half the time. So thank you all so much. Thank you and Lee and all you guys, and for all your employees at the funeral home. Once again, it's patreon.com/GetOnTap. I'm just kidding. For everybody out there, look, you really can and Get On Tap for Cash App, WB Riddle at PayPal. I think it's Get On Tap at Venmo as well. If you want to just do a one-time donation, whatever, all this money, it goes back into supporting our community. Look, we want everybody in this community. We love Franklin County. We love Appalachia. We love everything that all entails.
That's why we're here, right?
Exactly, we are. So we sincerely appreciate Dylan, you coming on here, and for Flora Funeral Service for sending you into the gauntlet with us here today. I think you've handled it magnificently, and in probably 20 years or so, when you have your own, funeral parlor, when you decided, just think, hopefully, maybe if not me and Simon, maybe me and one of Simon's kids will continue to be doing this show. And if y'all need sponsorship opportunities, you know where to find us.
Well, I don't know about having my own, but that would be interesting to have 5, 10, 15-year reunions with y'all. That would be kind of interesting because my experiences are only going to grow. As long as I stay in the business, But that'd be interesting.
You never know how it's going to work out. You never know how
it's funny how a business in death is a business for life.
It surely is. We'll have to walk off on that one. So, for Dylan, Flora Funeral Services, Jonah, from our last episode for the state of Appalachia, tune into that one. We're going to have a good time. Appalachian patreon.com/GetOnTap. Check that out for all your subscriber needs. $3 a month minimum. You can give more in your support, even if you don't listen to any of the good content, the early episodes, the subscriber stuff. You're still supporting us, and we're still putting that back into the community. So, Simon, thank you.
That's my pleasure.
Jonah,
thank you.
Thank
guys.
you. Dylan,
Appreciate it, guys.
thank you. We'll catch y'all on the next round.